Hi there, and welcome to Canceling COVID. I'm Tanya Rivens. We meet every Friday about this time, and I appreciate you joining me. Of course, our goal is to bring you facts and resources to help protect you, yourself, and your family during the pandemic. Now, with news that 2 million Americans are getting vaccinated daily. Boy, we've gotten to that point, which is good news. And fewer people are contracting the virus. States around the country are loosening safety rules, and that brings us to our question of the day. Do you feel more or less safe? We work so hard to get to this point, and I would really hate to see us go in another direction. And I usually try not to use the word hate as a strong word, but the truth of the matter is it would be so disappointing. So do you feel more or less safe as the pandemic lingers on? Because so many people now are getting comfortable and feeling like we put the work in and it's time to go ahead and bust loose, so to speak. Now, the CDC is saying, COVID fatigue could cause another spike. We know spring break is coming up. Easter, also known as Resurrection Weekend, is coming up, and people are looking forward to just getting out. Cabin fever, students were wanting to go on spring break. Heck, everybody wants to get out of the house. I get it, but we can't let our guards down just yet. So, it's so important that we continue to bring you information that you can use. This is a platform that's holding conversations like none other, especially in our community. And it's a viewpoint that everybody needs to hear. And so it's great to bring in Dr. Mika Iziri. I am so grateful for Dr. Aquaro, who allowed me to meet him and connect us. Remaining cautious is one way to cancel COVID, and another lies in the hands of scientists who are doing critical research to understand the virus and how it is overwhelmingly affecting minorities. So Dr. Mika Zira is doing cutting edge research at the only approved National Institute site right here in the city, and we're having a little bit of difficulty getting him on. Doc is not able to come up just yet, so we're going to transition. That's okay. We'll get him on because I really want to talk to him. As we hear about these vaccinations and all the information that seems to come out, oftentimes there's not enough research around our community, so we're left with questions. So he's going to help answer some of those questions as soon as we get him set up. But let's make a shift and talk about the president, President Biden. He isn't getting much bipartisan support. In fact, Republicans are now stalling the debate so that all 628 pages of the COVID relief bill, it has to be read, but a vote could still happen as soon as the weekend. Hey, we waited this long. What the heck, right? Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to break a 50-50 tie, and she's a powerful woman right now in that position. But what we want to do is kind of talk about um, the relief and how we're going to deal with this as we continue to press on. We know it's not an overnight solution. We know it's an ongoing. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. So let's talk about how we've all been impacted by COVID. We know it's affected us in one way or the other, and it is hard not to just reflect on everything that's been happening around us. So my next guest, he's using his experiences to encourage others. It's been an honor to even chat with him and to meet him. I'm bringing on our next guest. He's a Charlotte author, and his name is John Reeves. Good afternoon, Mr. Reeves, and thank you so much for joining us, taking the time to kind of share with us about what you have done to help others deal with COVID.
Absolutely, Tanya. First of all, thank you very much. Please call me John. Oh my God, you make me feel old
Okay.
when you call me Mister, but that's fine.
Okay. Well,
But
so John, everyone has respect. So, but I'll call
oh,
you
oh,
John.
absolutely. I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
But
Okay.
again, what you're doing, the medium that you've provided for so many different voices of diverse perspectives to present themselves is amazing. Thank you for what you do, and please continue to do so because not only in the Charlotte community, but other communities of Black and Brown people need to hear this information. So thank you again.
Okay, and John, give me a second because if you can still hear me, okay. We started
Yes,
out, and sometimes we have problems. So I think I
that's right.
need to refresh. So if you lose me, I'll be right back. But I'm trying
Okay,
to refresh and thank you so much for those kind words as well because I appreciate it. We're trying to do our best here, and some days
sure,
we hit the mark. Some days we just have these
it's
little
fine.
bugs that are around. And you're an IT professional, so
I
certainly
am.
you understand.
I
And
do.
yeah, so let's see if she can see me now to make sure. And while we're doing that, kind of mention what is the first book that you did because this is your second book.
Well, it is my second book. The first book I wrote was called "Will I Always Be a Blank in America? A Black Man's Reflections on Living in America." And I think it's timely that George Floyd's, the individual that has been on trial for his murder, is is about to occur. I believe it's on Monday,
Yeah.
and my book was really sort of positioned by, just so many of the things that transpired in 2020. We had the Ahmaud Arbery situation, and then of course, with George Floyd. I mean, it did something to me to the point where I just felt empowered to go and write about my various experiences as a Black man living in America. And the book, is 10 essays. And what's important about my books is that they're short reads. It's designed for individuals to, look at the prospective subjects. I provide, my perspective, my reflections, and move on. So I think what's so cool about at least my publications is that they're designed to provide an opinion, provide some positive reflections as well as not so positive, but then ultimately to leave you with a question that you can answer and then go off and write your own reflections in the future. So that's kind of what the goal of that book was, and it's done decently. And that book, as well as my current book, COVID-19, When Life Comes at You Fast, they're all available on any online medium, whether it is Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, and so forth. They're
So,
all available there.
so, John, let's talk about this book. The second book, COVID 19,
Mhm,
Life Comes at You Fast. Tell us what
mhm.
it's about. You kind of set it up, talked about your other book. So, this
Right.
one also allows you to go on and write your own, but write your own rather. But tell us what this book is about.
Sure. COVID-19, When Life Comes at You Fast, is all about my journey in the world of COVID. Now, unlike my previous book, what's so exciting about this particular book is that anyone that lives on this earth clearly has heard of COVID.
Right.
So there may be folk that may not necessarily want to deal with the challenges that we are dealing with in Black and Brown communities as relates to racial injustice. COVID-19 impacts all of us. And I thought it would be interesting to provide my reflections of my journey with COVID-19. Now, fortunately for me, I did not contract COVID-19. However, numbers of people around me within my community, outside of my community, and the like have contracted this horrible disease. And I just thought it would be great to write about my reflections as it relates to COVID, whether it involves, unemployment, isolation, dying to work, and the like. Just thought it would be really interesting to put forth my perspectives on, my thoughts of dealing with COVID.
So that's how you came up with the whole concept and the essays that you have entered. So it's kind of like your journal, sounds like, as you
It is. I would agree with you on that. That's probably a great way to look at it. But you know what? Probably the biggest thing that really prompted me to write COVID-19. I went on a job interview late last year, and no one in the job was wearing masks.
Oh,
And I literally walked into the room and was stunned. The person was like, "Oh, asked me to take a seat and so forth." And I couldn't believe it was five people in the room. And the room was really, really small. And I said, okay, I can either go in, have a seat. Now, keep in mind, I was wearing a mask. And I clearly, thought, wow, I still cannot believe that in this day and time, there are people not wearing a mask, whether you're outside or inside.
right, right.
So ultimately, the person invited me to sit down, and I said, "Hey, I left something in my car." So I basically made a beeline to the door, got in my car, and left.
Well, I don't
From
blame you
that,
then. Yeah, I don't blame you to get out quick, fast, and in a hurry, right?
yeah, so
Yeah,
from that experience, I said, wow, it would be really cool to write about what transpired. Because keep in mind, there are a number of us that are in a situation where, you know what, we have to sit in that room and we have to actually take whatever they provide us with
yeah,
because I want to feed my family. I want to be able to, buy gas to put in my car and so forth. So thus, everyone is not in a situation where they can walk away. But
That's
at the same time, for me, I had to just send a message that there are just some things that you're going to do and be respectful of me is one of those things. And I think the idea that no one was wearing a mask and they were sitting in close proximity to one another was a problem.
And I think I'm glad that you even made that point because you're absolutely right. Some people don't have the luxury of
No,
having a choice. So you had that luxury, and my goodness, with everything going on in your life, matters more than any job. And you had to make that decision, and it was a great decision. I want to just straight for a second for people that are hopping on. Do you feel more or less safe as the pandemic lingers on? That's our question of the day. I see Altavia Jones, also Erica Simulton Beatty, and Joe Laurie. Guys, weigh in on the question of the day. Do you think that we are more safe or not as we continue inside of the pandemic? And we're seeing some positive signs. The county has come out and said, the numbers over the last 14 days were stable. But Joe, I want to, John, that is, I apologize,
you're
drop
fine.
back into what we were talking about with your book. What are some of your favorite essays or your favorite entries or any that stand out that you would like to share?
Right. And in fact, one of my favorites, I want to read it,
Okay.
if I can for a quick second, because it really was, I was thinking about that. Again, some of the titles include COVID-19 will not stop me from wanting what I want, dying to work, my experience as a vaccine patient, volunteer.
Okay.
And what sums up my entire book is the following paragraph, and it's very brief. This pandemic has changed all of us somehow, and maybe the solution to eliminating COVID 19 rests with simplifying our lives and practicing patience and deliberate compassion for others. COVID 19 is a killer, but that does not mean we need to be.
Oh, wow. That's very powerful, and that's, so on point, and that's one of the things that so many people, were very impressed with, as far as taking this pandemic, which is such a tragedy on so many levels, but it also made us refocus on things that were important, the simple things, getting back to family, getting back to because it was always, "I gotta go here, gotta go there, got this going on, this," and all of a sudden, we're just, boom, back on our behinds, back in the house, and trying to enjoy just the smallest things that we had taken for granted. So that sounds really exciting about those chapters that you just shared, those essays inside of your book. What do you want people to come away from or come away with once they read your book?
Sure. And again, each essay ends with a question. So the overall question that I would ask anyone that read my book or want to particularly just write their own reflections on COVID-19, what are you going to do? Are you going to be on the sidelines and watch life, basically pass you by? Or are you going to get in the game and be proactive? And being proactive doesn't necessarily mean you need to write your own essays. It could be raising your hand and getting educated on COVID 19.
Right.
It could be volunteering virtually to talk about your concerns and your frustrations and your, maybe fear of not only the virus, but of the vaccination. All of those things I think are critical for us moving forward. So my question ultimately will be, what are you going to do to help affect change and to move us forward so that we can enjoy some sense of normalcy? Because keep in mind, I don't think we need to go back to what we were doing in the past. I think we need to take this moment and become anew and look differently at life so that again that we won't find ourselves 2 or 3 years down the road doing what we've done in the past and getting the same type of results we received in the past.
That's a good point. So, why don't you weigh in on our question of the day, which is, do you feel more or less safe now that there are three vaccines and cases seem to be dropping? And how do you feel about that?
I do not feel much safe now. And again, that's probably really oddly coming from someone that's been vaccinated since September 2020, because I was a vaccine volunteer. So, and the reason why is because too many people are putting their guards down We have all of these different variants that are occurring, and just too many situations that are not basically put in check. That's basically continuing to keep me sort of wondering, oh my goodness, what else do I need to do? I'm vaccinated and I'm still wearing a mask, and I will continue to, social distance, as well as to call my family members versus dropping in and seeing them. But ultimately, for me, until I think everyone is not only taking this seriously, but come to the realization that we're in this for the long ride, and we cannot just decide just because we get a shot that we can go back to business as usual, because at the end of the day, we don't know.
So, John, I just want to point out a couple of people weighed in on the question of the day. Reginald Massey, I don't think he answered the question. He just said thanks. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Reginald. My sister Travis, though, she says she's undecided right now. Whether,
Mhm.
she feels more or less safe. I think we all are going to have to really come to the conclusion whether we want to keep the mask on and continue to
Right.
physical distance and wash our hands. But I really appreciate you sharing your opinion on that. Tell everyone how they can find your book. Where can they go and pick it up? Because it sounds like a great read for anyone. And I love the idea that once they complete it, there's work for them to do as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, you can pick up the book, COVID-19 When Life Comes at You Fast, pretty much at any online book retailer. Again, it could be Barnes and Noble, it could be Amazon, it could be books.com. At the end of the day, you type in my name, you type in a title, you can not only get that book, you get any of the two books that I actually have completed online. Unfortunately, most retailers do not sort of carry the book on their shelves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, but online, you definitely can get the book pretty much at any book retailer out there.
And John, you make some really good points. I love the energy that you bring. Thanks for sharing all that information. Thanks for reaching out, and let's continue to stay in touch. Certainly, it's about education and the fact that you even took the initiative, and wrote this book and want people to have this conversation. I can think of so many ways that it benefits others because one of the things that I know another person that has a journal is the mental health aspect and people being
Absolutely.
and talk
Absolutely.
about what's going on with them instead of because not realizing how they're being impacted, and that's another thing that you have like put paper, pen to paper, and have voiced what's going on with you, and hopefully will encourage others to do the same.
Right, and I really do appreciate it. But if I can leave your viewers and your listeners with any final thought, again, you need to get in the game. Figure out what works best for you and get in the game. And the very last thing is, I think this is an opportunity for us to be much more compassionate and empathetic towards others. COVID, if it hasn't done anything for many folk, but for me, it has really, really encouraged me to make sure that I am listening to my fellow neighbor, friends, family members, and so forth, doing all that I can to improve the quality of their lives. Yes, my own as well, but more importantly, other folks' lives. So hopefully, more people can practice patience and compassion, and we'll get through this COVID journey a lot better than how we started it.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thank you, John Reeves. I appreciate you taking the time to talk
Thank
with
you. And thank you again for
me.
what you do.
Yeah,
Yep.
of course, you can find his book, and that's great information. COVID-19 When Life Comes at You Fast. And at his point, get in the game. What are you going to do? He hit on some very powerful statements as we had that conversation. And I just love his energy and love that he cares enough, like I said, to take the time to write and share and encourage other people to make a decision. Are you going to get in the game or just stand on the sidelines? I can tell you who's getting ready to ramp things up. CMS, they voted to increase in person to 4 days for elementary students on Tuesday. And of course, the education board for the state, they want schools reopened by the end of March. We're starting to try to transition back to a little bit of how we started as far as education for our kids. And of course, one of the biggest challenges is that our students are struggling. They're not in the classrooms and they're having a hard time. I believe I saw a third grade level, just huge percentage that's just not getting it. And you have to admit it, it's a challenge. You know, the remote learning kind of pushed on them, and it's just different for everyone. But it's been a great time for us to reevaluate a whole lot of things that are happening in our community and happening with us. Dr. Ziri, we're not able to get him on, I don't believe. I'm going to check one more time, and that's okay. It happens. If you have been with us since we started, there were times when we were able to get him and get everybody on, and the show would flow just fine. And there's times that it didn't happen that way. And that's just how it is. That's how life happens. That's how technology happens. But we continue to make the best of it. And you can best believe that the producer, Amelia, is doing everything she can to get them on. Sometimes it has to do with where people are located. It has to do with their internet connection. It has to do with a lot of different things. And our purpose again is to educate you. I mentioned the county saying that now the number has been stable for the last 14 days, which is good news. That's encouraging as well. Also, I mentioned, let me mention that is that the county now has over 96,000, getting close to 100,000 cases confirmed in the county. But the fact that we've got so many people now getting vaccinated, I believe it's about 2 million, that's also impressive. And it's good to see that we're making progress. We'll get Dr. Ziri rescheduled so we can get him on. But need for you guys to weigh in on the question of the day. I'd love to hear your responses. I see you guys are hopping on. So just weigh in so I can share with you. Do you feel more or less safe as the pandemic lingers on? We'd love to share your comments. And even after we're off, speaking of share, I have to plug this one. I'd love for you to share what we have done here so that other people will know that we're on Wednesdays and Fridays. Now, everyone seems to be watching closely. It's those stimulus checks, and I mentioned that earlier as well about what's going on with the Senate. You know, one of the things that we have the power of, and that is voting. When we see all of this going on and we're not happy about it, and we have problems and can't quite understand the politics of it all, then keep in mind that you do have the power to vote. And don't let anyone tell you that it's not effective or it doesn't have an impact, because it certainly does. Hey, I wanted to mention some other areas now, as we talked about more people getting vaccinated. More areas are starting to get access. You know, some of the drugstores have gotten them, but get this, some of the supermarkets, look at Harris Teeter now, they are providing vaccinations, and so you can sign up. And so before you know it, you get a vaccine, you get a vaccine, everybody gets a vaccine. What we work to do though is to educate you and you make the decision. So we bring you the information, just a real platform talking about what's available, and then you make your choice. You decide whether you want to get the vaccine or not, but certainly making it accessible. And as we continue to build every week on sharing information, you know, you've learned some really important things about testing. It should be regular. It shouldn't just be one and done. You have to continuously stay on top of that. You shouldn't be getting the vaccine if you have COVID. You know, these are things that I'm not certain that I hear anyone talking about. And that's what we're here to do. I see G Man just hopped on. Maybe he can tell us, and others, please tell us the question of the day. We'd love to hear your comments as we start to wrap things up. I'd love to share. And the question of the day is, do you feel more or less safe? That's the idea that we're trying to share with everyone, because certainly we are starting to see some progress. And boy, did we not think that we would get to this point. I mean, we all knew that we would, but we just didn't know when. And it's been over a year now, and that's quite some time to have to hunker down and do what we've been doing. But certainly we're not out of the woods yet, and the CDC is warning that. So when you go about your daily lives, as we go through this weekend, we're expecting some more nice weather, sunny skies. You know, all it takes is the sun for us to really get moving. But just don't take for granted that you should still be practicing physical hygiene, physical distancing, that is personal hygiene, and wearing your mask. And a lot of people are double masking now too. It doesn't hurt to do that. So we'll start to wrap things up, guys. Please share, let everyone know that we're here Wednesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. I think I said that already. You can join me on Sunday at 7 a.m. Sounds of Inspiration on WGIV. Inspiration and information. Hopefully you'll tune in. Coming up on Sunday, I've got a conversation with Global Village Health. They were on Wednesday, where they're going to talk about more exciting things that they are doing in the community and help to educate you as well about what's going on with COVID-19. Joe says he feels safe and more informed because of this platform. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. If you don't remember, Joe is one of the people that was on. He was one of our guests who had the lingering effects after he recovered from COVID. And he has been a very powerful voice in educating and making people aware of what is going on with this disease. Some things that aren't often talked about, an overlooked population once people have recovered from COVID. So, thank you guys so much for joining me. Enjoy the great weather. Get out, have a great weekend. Be safe. Again, thanks for tuning in to Canceling COVID. Together, we will cancel COVID and we're going to survive this pandemic. I like what John Lee said. We'll be better coming out than we are going into this. Take care, everybody.